Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of My Thoughts. I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas. As I think I stated last video, I'm recording these episodes ahead of time. So by the time this episode should come out, it should be the week after Christmas. So, again, I hope everybody had a very happy holidays and a Merry Christmas for those of you who celebrate. This is the second to last episode of season 2 of My Thoughts. And again, as I've mentioned before, I just want to make sure to reemphasize this that my thoughts will be changing following the end of season 2. I will be doing a My Thoughts video for projects as they are released. I'm going to sort of change it up a bit, and I will be doing my thoughts on the shorts and the specials. So I Am Groot, the Guardians Holiday Special, stuff like that, and I'll just be ranking them. Probably out of 10, something like that. I'll figure that out and let you guys know about it once I reach that decision. And then I have a new series starting up, which I'm very excited about. In fact, just to give you guys a little spoiler, there's going to be likely a 19 episode season 1 for this new series, and I'm going to try to make it a lot more high quality than some of the content that I've been producing thus far. Again, we'll get into that because the first episode of that, I am guessing, will be coming a few weeks after my Wakanda Forever review, which will be releasing next Saturday. So just be on the lookout for that and for more information. I'll have more information about that at the end of that episode. But for those of you who are new to the series, once again, My Thoughts is where I literally give you my thoughts on the movies of Phase 4. In Season 1, we went over the Disney Plus shows, where we had WandaVision ranked as the best show from the Phase 4 Disney Plus series. And right now in Season 2, we are reviewing the Phase 4 films. And so far, we have Spider-Man No Way Home in the number 1 spot. We have Shang-Chi in the number 3 spot. We have Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness in the 4th spot. We have Black Widow in the 6th spot. And we have the Eternals in the 7th spot. So a bit of range here. So we have the 5th and the 2nd spot up for grabs. And of course, depending on where Thor Love and Thunder is ranked in this episode, we will already sort of know the ranking of Wakanda Forever, but I will encourage you all to still tune in for that episode to see why it ranks either in the 2nd or the 5th spot. But as I just mentioned, today we are talking about Thor Love and Thunder. And as I have stated previously, a lot of the films in Phase 4 are fairly debatable as to where one might want them to be ranked or have them ranked. And I think that Thor Love and Thunder is sort of breaks this mold a bit. In fact, I think it probably breaks this mold quite like the Eternals does, actually. I think that the Eternals and Thor Love and Thunder are two movies that sort of have a consensus about them. And of course, if you follow Marvel like I do, you sort of know where that consensus is. But I'm not going to spoil that, as I want to talk with you all about the film and the characters within the film before we reach that point of the video. But I do think it is worth noting that Thor Love and Thunder itself was one of the most hyped films of Phase 4. I think that's very important to remember going into it, because Thor Ragnarok, in many people's opinions, multiple people who I have heard, consider it to be one of the best MCU films in general. They consider it to be, again, not just one of the better Marvel films, but the best Marvel MCU film that has been produced. And a lot of that is because Taika Waititi came in and completely changed, the Thor character, in a lot of people's mind for the better. They put a lot more comedic aspects in it. They leaned into a lot more of the cooler attributes and cooler qualities of Thor. And again, a lot of people really enjoyed that. And, I mean, I did as well. I think that Ragnarok is one of the better films in the MCU. And because of that, there were a lot of high expectations coming into this film, especially because of where Thor was left at the end of Avengers Endgame, being, one of the few original Avengers who survived and was going to play a big role in the upcoming phase. It was exciting to see what was going to happen, and not to mention, and maybe it's inevitable at this point because of the sort of impact of Thanos as a villain. I think for a lot of people, they're going to view Thanos as the Darth Vader of modern cinema in terms of villains, just this superimposing villain. But Gore the God Butcher had a lot of hype coming in as a villain. A lot of people were saying that he was going to be a Thanos level villain, that people were going to sympathize with him on the same level that Thanos did, because the whole point of his character from the comics is that he hated the gods, and that the gods, sort of turned their back on the everyman, and because of that, they needed to be destroyed. And, based on especially how the gods were portrayed in this film, I think that a lot of people were, led to believe that he was right. And now, again, we'll discuss whether or not the film did a good job of that. But I think it's important to note that, again, this film had so much hype. And I think in terms of all of the films that we've seen in Phase 4, I think it had a villain that was the most hyped out of all of them. Because I don't think in any of the other films we've gotten that there was really a villain as pronounced as Gore the God Butcher. So, again, this film just had a lot to live up to. And with that being said, as always, we're going to start off by talking about the main characters, or the most important characters in the film, as well as a villain. Then I'm going to give you my favorite scene and my least favorite scene, and then we are going to move on and rank the film. So, of course, we have to start off with the hero, who the film is named after, Thor. And it's important to note again that Thor has sort of gone through a transformation. And in his first film, Thor was very serious. He was somewhat comedic. He was somewhat stupid, but stupid not in a intellectual way. Stupid in terms of he did not know how Earth operated, or how things on Earth were. Stuff like that. Not stupid in he just lacked the intellectual capacity to do anything. He just did not know the norms and things of Earth like that. And it was funny because of that. Now, again, didn't really work out in the first few Thor films. And even in Ragnarok, I think the big thing that made Thor a funnier character is that he just became witty. He wasn't really stupid. He was just witty. And that worked in his favor because, again, you had a very serious character who we knew was strong, but that, we really got this idea of, okay, he's strong, he's humorous, what's not to like? And then, seeing his interaction with the Guardians of the Galaxy in Infinity War and Endgame, and sort of being left off with that, it was exciting to see what was going to happen. And this film, I think, truly represented the death of serious Thor in any capacity, and goofy Thor is here to stay. And I'm not sure that this change is a great one, especially because, again, it's one thing if you can make a character goofy, but if you're going to make a character goofy, you have to make sure that their comedy is hitting. And Thor being used as comedic relief did not work. In fact, again, it made him seem stupid in that he lacked intellectual capacity in this film, and not stupid as in he didn't know the customs of Earth or didn't know the way of things. And that just really hurts his character. And I think the thing that is really emphasized here above all else is that, we have this conversation at the very beginning between Thor and Star-Lord, where Star-Lord basically tells Thor, you don't know who you are and you need to figure that out. And, of course, us, the audience who knows Thor, have known that Thor has been trying to figure this out all along. and it really hits you that we're in the fourth Thor film, and Thor has also appeared in various other films, Avengers, Age of Ultron, even Doctor Strange, you count that post credit scene, um, Infinity War, and Endgame. So, five other films, and I could be forgetting another film where he appeared, and I don't believe I am, but if I am, I apologize about that. And we're still sort of having this discussion of who Thor actually is. And it sort of shows you that this character really is stagnant, and if anything, he's fallen off a lot. And I think it's sad because, again, you can tell Chris Hemsworth does a great job in the role. He's a great actor. But Thor, the character, I mean, he's just not progressing. He's not showing growth, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating to say the least, especially because I'm a big Thor fan. I know a lot of you guys are, but this was definitely not his best performance. If you like goofy Thor, then you are going to be a fan of this portrayal. But I, for one, am not, and it was very disappointing in my opinion. Next up is Jane Foster, and I think that this was surprising to a lot of people that she was going to be coming back because Natalie Portman has a long and sort of well known history of not particularly getting along with the Marvel execs or not enjoying her time playing Jane Foster in the MCU. But she came back and played a very important role. Um, and the sad thing is that they completely botch the significance that Jane could have played. Because the first shot we get of Jane is us learning that Jane has cancer. And you can tell that her cancer diagnosis is taken seriously. And they want us, the audience, to take it seriously until it isn't. And by that, I mean, there's this whole build up about how her Thor powers are actually killing her um, in the process. And, her final sacrifice at the end of the film is supposed to make us feel, like this tremendous loss. And it does. The only issue is that immediately following this, the post credit scene showing her in Valhalla shows that she will be back. And essentially, her death had no real meaning. She didn't make a sacrifice, choosing to save others and sacrificing her life in the process. And that's very disappointing, especially because, again, I think that this could have been a great exit for Jane Foster. She was sort of thrown off the radar, and then all of a sudden she comes back. She could have made a great sacrifice and sort of ended her character arc, but again, instead, we decide to basically open up the door for her to come back and have two Thors. And with the recent news that Chris Hemsworth is sort of getting over playing Thor and that he hopes that Thor's arc will be closed in the next few movies, um, it's something that we're we can sort of see the writing on the wall to see that Jane Foster will come back in some form or another, in some other capacity. And I think the other issue, too, is that it's quite similar to Thor. When Jane Foster is in her Mighty Thor form, her jokes do not hit. There's this whole joke about her trying to come up with a catchphrase, and it is just prolonged and not funny whatsoever. So, again, I really wanted to enjoy Jane Foster's character, but every single thing that she did that could have been meaningful, they sort of undercut with something else in the film, and that's just very disappointing. Next up is Valkyrie, and she's the only real character in the movie that has comic relief that somewhat works. But the other issue I do have an issue with her, and that is that at the very end of Thor, or of Endgame, excuse me, you know, and throughout Endgame, we see her taking up a lot of responsibility that we didn't see in Thor Ragnarok. And in this film, it sort of seems like it's completely reverted back to how she was in Thor Ragnarok, sort of just being this jokester. Um, and again, you hope that they would have character growth. Um, and that's sort of the issue with this character, is that her whole I don't care attitude it's funny at times, and it certainly works. And especially, I think the one time where Jane Foster's humor is sort of, again, it sort of works, is when she's bouncing off of with Valkyrie. But it gets dull after a while because you sort of sit there and you go, okay, Valkyrie doesn't care about anything. So why is she trying to help Thor out so much? Because it does not appear that she could give less of a care in the world about anything that's going on. And again, it's just you see her take up responsibilities as a king, the new king of Asgard, and then she just sort of lets her life get dull in that role, and she wants to revert back to everything she used to be. And I guess that might be realistic, but in terms of character growth, there isn't really anything. And again, she's just reduced to pointless comedic relief when she could have been a character that, you know, had a decent character arc. And that's upsetting. And that's she's a character I was looking forward to seeing what they did with her. And once again, I was quite disappointed with the result. Korg is up next, and I'm gonna make him pretty quick, because he is literally the comedic relief character. And as I said, all these characters, it appears like, are trying to be comedic relief characters, but he's pointless. Um, None of his jokes work, and quite frankly, it's fairly obvious that the only reason he's still around is so Taika Waititi can have a chance to play a voice in a film and be in the MCU. And I think that by Taika choosing to put himself in there in this role, he's inserting more of himself than he is progressing the actual story. And in fact, I think that they should have just let Korg die when they arrived and fought Zeus. I think that allowing him to die there, it would have been it would have been a great motivating factor for Thor, to really say, okay, I don't have any friends or allies in this fight, and so I'm gonna have to do this on my own. And instead, of course, we have to have him survive so we can put him on the back of Valkyrie and make it a comedic relief moment. And it is the most pointless version of comedic relief ever. And again, it's just disappointing. I wish that they would have allowed him to die off and move on with, Thor's character not having to be tied to Korg. Finally, the final character we're going to talk about is Gore the God Butcher. So, of course, he's the villain, and he did have some good moments. I think the opening and closing scenes of the movie were pretty good with him, where we see that he has sort of dedicated his whole life to the gods and then, renounces the gods after they betray him, and then ultimately chooses to, make a wish instead of killing all the gods to save his daughter and bring his daughter back to life. And, I think that was good, but the overall character growth seems very nonchalant. It's almost sort of like, he gets this sword and it's killing him. We're not really told that it's killing him, or we don't really see that it's killing him. And all of a sudden, he's just as powerful as Thor. And he's just able to get everything to work perfectly. He's able to wield Stormbreaker. And again, it just seems convenient. And again, as I mentioned at the start, it's very clear that the hope was that Gore would be considered a Thanos-type villain. And in that regard, they quite clearly missed the mark on that. But again, I think it's difficult when you're trying to have someone be a character like Thanos, because it doesn't work very well, because Thanos is a very unique villain. He captured the hearts and minds of people in a way that not many other characters can, and it's going to be very hard to have somebody else like that. So again, a good villain, but not great. So as always, I'm going to speed through my best and worst scene, because we're coming up on making it another long video. And for those of you who stick through the whole way, I really want to say I appreciate it. But my favorite scene was the opening scene with the Guardians of the Galaxy, with the battle scene with Thor, with AC/DC, I believe, playing in the background and watching him fight all the owl people. I mean, it was epic. It was one of my favorite MCU fight scenes, to be honest. It was definitely not as good as the Shang-Chi bus fight scene, which I personally believe is the best scene, or the best fight scenes, one of the best fight scenes of Phase 4 for sure. I think that this fight scene might actually be second. Maybe third. I'd have to think about that a little bit more, but it's definitely in the top 5 at least. And again, I just thought it was good. I thought it was a great representation of Thor's character, showing how strong, silly, but yet serious he is when he has to accomplish something. And again, I wish that it was that sort of tone that would have been throughout the entire film instead of just in the opening battle scene. And I couldn't really think of one worse scene. So I just chose a lot of the comedy scenes, but in particular, any scene that involves the two goats. I do not know who thought that the two goats would be a great comedic bit, but whoever did deserves to be fired, and hopefully they never write comedy again, because it's not funny, it's annoying. I actually do not know a single person who said, oh yeah, I thought the screaming goats were, an absolutely hilarious part of the film. Everybody I've talked to have said it's annoying, and I hope that, again, we do not have to deal with these goats in the future, because it is extremely tiring and it's just not funny. And again, if you're trying to make Thor a funny character, at least make it funny, and it absolutely failed to do that on a monumental level. So with that being said, it's time to rank Thor Love and Thunder, and I'm here to tell you that I'm ranking Thor Love and Thunder my 5th out of 7th film. It's just not a great film. I think you can watch it. I've watched it twice at this point, but it's not great. It's not Ragnarok. It did not live up to the hype. And again, I really think that Thor is a stunted character. I hate to say that, because I really enjoy Thor. I think that, he's very cool. He's powerful, obviously. And he can be a good way to move the plot along in a lot of ways. But just in terms of where I think we all hope to see his character arc go, it's been stunted at this point, and that's very disappointing. And again, I think that ultimately the biggest downfall of Thor Love and Thunder is that it failed to live up to any of the hype that was brought to the franchise by Ragnarok. And I think that's, the sad reality of things. And I'd be very surprised if Taika Waititi is directing Thor 5, if that really is a movie that will be in the works as a result. Because again, I just think that this was one of the bigger disappointments all around. But with that being said, you guys now know that Black Panther Wakanda Forever is in the 2nd spot. So tune in next week to find out why I have it ranked there. And as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment and share this video with a friend. I appreciate you all watching this, and again, I hope you all had a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. And I'll see you all next Saturday for our discussion of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. See you then.